So once again, thank you so much for joining us here today on this Wednesday in the States and Thursday in Australia. And, we're all one step closer to the weekend, which is fantastic news. Unless you're in Minnesota like me, where we're going to get another snowstorm, which is great. So, and happy early St. Patrick's Day to those that celebrate. I know I will be enjoying a beverage or two. But let's get going here. Part of the overall idea behind these migrating from Integration Designer 9 to 11 is to give you a sense of not only what can be done, but why it's important to make that transition and the features involved in it and how it can improve your programming from a time standpoint, from the offerings that you can provide to your clients. And make sure that you're aware of the differences, because I know a lot of integrators out there have they've done Integration Designer 9 or even before, and they like what they have and it's consistent and it works, which is great. But what you'll see as we kind of go through this is that there are limitations to what Integration Designer 9 can do, and Integration Designer 11 just takes it to a whole different level. And I'm not just talking about the UI design, but as we move forward with newer drivers and being able to pull information and being able to provide information to your clients. I'm talking about newer products that will only be available to have templates available to them in Integration Designer 11. Not that they won't be able to be programmed necessarily in 9, but it might get to that point eventually where we're going to have to make sure that you're prepared for that transition. So to kind of give you an idea of what we're going to talk about today, above everything is I want to make sure everybody's aware of the system preparation things. And then again, this is more housekeeping than anything. Most of you probably already are aware of these features, but I want to make sure that we talk about it because it is important. We've made some changes with Integration Designer 11 in the recent updates, and we want to make sure that you have the latest information regarding it. I also want to talk about the offered templates and how it can, and what's the differences between the two and how you can see in the offerings in terms of the features and functionality of those and how it will increase your programming time. I want to show you the ability to create your graphics and the design differences for them. I want to talk about the different, why layers and viewports are so vital versus just doing a slew of pages and how those play out. And then what I want to talk about, and this is the big question that always comes up, is converting ID9 custom templates to ID11 type templates. And there's some things that I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions about this, and feel free to put them in the question and answer section. We'll get them answered. But I want to make sure that you are aware that there are certain things that you can and cannot do with that in that realm. And I always want to make sure that you have all the resources available for you. So we're going to provide you a bunch of different additional resources and contact information so that you can continue your education prowess, as well as, if you do have questions as you're starting to get more and more involved in ID11, you know where to go or how to work things in. And then, of course, some basic key takeaways. So why don't we kick it off right away? I almost forgot. Vincent, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Don't worry. No need to.
So let's talk a little bit about what the system preparation looks like here, and feel free, Vincent, to jump in at any time. But the first thing we always want to make sure that you do is check your Integration Designer version and make sure that you're up to date. And if you're not sure, you can always go up to the help window. But the nice thing about Integration Designer 11 is that once you've installed it, you put in your login information, your credentials for your dealer portal account, and it should prompt an update if needed. It will go out and check every time that you do launch Integration Designer 11, as long as you are online. So make sure that you do have the latest version. Check your processor and device firmwares. There's nothing that is more aggravating to you as an integrator is trying to get something to work and realizing after you've spent hours and hours trying to troubleshoot it that you have the wrong firmware. I've done it. It is the most aggravating thing. It makes you feel so small that you didn't check that one thing. And then make sure, sorry about that. But make sure your computer is a 64-bit computer with Windows 10 or higher as its native OS. Integration Designer 11.3, the latest iteration of it, does require a 64-bit computer. 11.2 was the last version that will utilize 32-bit, but having a Windows 10 or higher is a requirement on those PCs now. Any sort of Apple-based machines using the parallels or those, they don't work anymore. It's better for you to go out, buy yourself a cheapy Windows 10 64-bit computer and rock and roll with that. You'll have a much better experience and won't run into any problems. Those are just a couple of things to make sure that you keep in mind as you prepare to start making that transition from 9 to 11. But let's dive into the UI side of things. So as I mentioned, we want to talk about the template side of it, and I'm going to bring over a couple of screens here real quick and side by side for you here. So I've got Windows 9. I'm Windows 9, Integration Designer 9 on the left-hand window here, and Integration Designer 11 on the right. And very basic type of, a very similar type of look and feel to it. Obviously, there's some differences in the overall structure of the program, but we're not going to work on that today. And one of the things that we want to keep in mind is the templates. So what is RTI providing you as a base template to work on? And there have been numerous ones out there over the years with Integration Designer, dating back to, oh my gosh, Carousel, and I think one of them was Steel, and another one was Blue something. There was Oasis, and a whole bunch of them that are in there. The thing you need to keep in mind is that there are obviously, for newer devices, going to be those limitations in terms of what can be programmed. For example, on a T2X, when we look at something like this and pull up the available pages for this device, you see it's only available for this device right now in the Oasis template. Whereas if I were to add in, say, a T2X into the room here, into the showroom, we'll just use the showroom as an example here, it gives me options such as the Coral, which is the brand new template, which I'll talk about in a minute, and Obsidian, which is the older Apex version template. But you also will see under the template two different options, list menus and button menu. And this is a point of confusion for a lot of people right now because they're not sure, well, which one do I need or which one should I select? How, what do these look like and how do they work for my clients? So let me just add this real quick here and close it out. And I'm going to show you two different examples of what those templates look like. So on Integration Designer 9, obviously we have our templates here. And, if you wanted to use one of the old school ones, you certainly could. You could go in and find, say, let's see here, let's do a T2C plus. See it. And you can see, there's Carousel and Diamond Plate and all these ones that you could use. And if you wanted to, for whatever reason, use some of these archaic, you certainly could, and then convert these devices to certain newer devices. But again, this is older type of look and feel. But the thing I want to make important to make sure everybody's aware of is that you still can use these and convert them. You just got to be careful with that because they were designed for lower resolution screens and past devices. So just keep that in mind as you start looking at these types of devices. Get that out of here. Now, in terms of the menus, in Integration Designer 9, we were required to build all of our own menus, whether it's using the homepage by adding in the different page sources and then having to manipulate those for that type of menu system. But what I mentioned before in terms of, just insert that real quick, in terms of Integration Designer 11 is that the button menu and the list menu under the template options will give you those two different looks to that homepage and being able to navigate to these as you had been before. So for example, on the iPad, and I do this because it's a little bit bigger of an interface here for us to look at here. And let me bring this down. And we'll use the new feature where I can scroll it over to the right here. What you'll notice is that on this iPad, where we have our base menus here and available to us to change, on the template that we provide to you under Coral, you have, for the list menu, this two-way scrolling list menu that will allow us to see all the different room names or sources that are available versus having individual pages. So they're all listed for you and dynamic based on what you select. So case in point, if this is if I'm using the iPad as a global-based controller, which I am for the whole project, I can select the room that I'm working with and have the sources then populate in that list right on the device itself without having to change to a different page. You gotta remember, pages and the graphics all take up memory, right? And the more pages you have, the more memory it takes. Well, if I don't need to do that, if I can create a two-way list like this and make it easy for me to automatically populate those, that's one very unique way to do it. But if you did want a little more customization side, the button menu template gives us the ability to have essentially what we did over here with this, where you have your individual and selectable type of items versus being able to, let me unlock it, customize and make each one of these, instead of a two-way scrolling list, I can customize this to the specific room name or the specific source or whatever the case may be, and make it a little bit more designed for a specific project. Now, is there a right or a wrong way to do that? No, it's completely dependent on the project at hand and what the requirement is of the client. For example, a commercial-based application is going to use a button menu a lot more than they would use a list menu, because they're going to need more of a customized specific selection criteria versus having just a list that's automatically populated from time, based on what the selection is. So the list menu, as I mentioned before, is going to create that two-way scrolling list based on the room names and then the sources within those rooms as you select them. And then the button menu gives you just that dedicated option of selecting and creating these step by step. Okay, so keep that in mind as you go through and you're starting to add these in. Now, I did also mention that there is faster programming involved on this. What does that mean? Well, if we think about adding something in, let me add in to our workspace here. I've got my T4X, and I want to add in, say, the DirecTV driver, just because. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select the DirecTV driver. I know it's not the perfect example for everybody and what you're using, but let's go ahead and just use it for global, just to make it a little more. You'll see that it is automatically going to say, hey, I see that you want to add this source in, this device, this driver. Do you want me to create a page for it? Well, this is already taking one step out of the mix here, right? Because in Integration Designer 11, when I add this in, not only can I add it into the singular device, I can add it into the two iOS-based devices or the two RTI panel devices. And upon doing so, and I'll close this out, pardon me, and selecting that specific tuner in this case, and saying, okay, there's my T4X, you'll notice that there's check marks on all of these. Well, this is what I'm talking about in terms of faster programming on the command side as well. Because if I select this, you see the command has already been placed in there. Tags have played a major part into this and the auto programming feature, so I don't need to drag and drop. If I go over here to the Integration Designer 9 and I want to add in that driver, well, you've got to go to and download the driver, which is great, and it seems to work just fine. I added it in, but then what do I need to do? Well, then I need to go into the T4X, right? I need to add a page. Where's that satellite cable DVR page? All right, there it is. I'll insert that page. We'll close this out. Let's go to the satellite DVR. All right, now I've got to find the commands. So let's go and find the driver, and we're going to find those specific commands. Color keys. All right, what color do I need? Well, there's tuner 1, red, press and release, or press and hold, whatever I need. I'm going to drag that to that one, and we're in good shape. Now, I show the long way of doing this. And of course, I'm well aware that, if those that are established have already created these and are reusing their projects and making subtle changes to them as time goes on or making adjustments to it. But the simple fact is, if you are doing something from scratch, you saw how many extra steps it took just for that one command to get on there. But now I would need to go to the iPad and also add in that page and select those and be able to place those commands directly onto those buttons. We insert the page, like I said, and then we select it and then drag the commands on. So the process in Integration Designer 11 is so much faster in terms of being able to get in and out of a job, or even just adding the pages and most of the generalized commands. Okay, so when you're looking at the side-by-side comparison in terms of the templates, Integration Designer 11 with the Coral template will give you not only, and let me bring it up actually, you know what, I'll go into the page wizard real quick. Not only the ability to get in and out of a job a little faster in terms of the command programming. But also, we've designed pages that are specific to specific devices, like Apple TV or Roku, or even RTI Music, where there's a lot of information that's going to be need to be had in here. Or a keyboard, creating a keyboard for you to be able to use, right? If I were to add RTI Music into the mix, yeah, it's going to have a lot in it, but it gives us, it's already been done for us. It makes that process a lot faster. The other really cool thing about these is that as you start to build them in Integration Designer 11, and I'll start to show you some different features about this, but with Integration Designer 11, you can use this as your base template to start with and make so many customizations based on what you need just from the template. You want to change the background, you can change the background. Of course, you can do that in ID9, but there's some cool ways that we can show you on this as well. Okay, so it's faster. The predetermined tags on the buttons, the ability for us to say, yeah, you know what, when I'm going to add another part into the project, say RTI Music as an example, and I add that player one into the mix, we'll add to global, and I want to throw that player one on here. I'm going to create those pages. It's going to load them in, and boom, I select, I go to my workspace, find that player one, and check it out. I can also navigate faster in terms of the UI. I can get in and out of these pages a lot faster and make the changes necessary right out the gate. Okay, so the templates that of them in and of themselves is a huge sell point. And as I mentioned before, you still have the ability to create those older ones in ID9 and use them, and even create them and convert them to the newer devices. But there are certain devices that don't have any templates built into them. For example, in ID9, if I were to select, say, the KA8, leave it as untitled, you'll see it says no page wizard available because we didn't create the pages for it, right? So, you might need to build that completely from scratch, each page, or convert it from something else if available. So it actually might take you more time to do that in the long run, even as you start to develop these different pages. So just keep that in mind that, as we continue to evolve Integration Designer 11 with newer templates and newer offerings and newer products, not all of them are going to have the template capabilities or the templates built into them in terms of ID9. So this elegant Coral template with the options available for you will make your life a lot easier. All right. Now, the other question that we get quite a bit is in regards to the graphical design difference. So I look at something like these two different pages, and let me go to, all right. So we've got our page here, and it looks pretty well set up for what we need on this, in terms of this. And of course, we'd have to place each command to where it needs to go and all that kind of fun stuff. But in terms of the design, and the graphic design differences on them, in terms of creating the pages, whether they're from scratch or manipulating the ones that are already there, it takes a lot of extra work. Case in point, if I were to look at, say, this ABC, and I wanted to make this button maybe just a hair bigger, well, I can make the button area bigger, but you notice that the graphic does not move on it whatsoever, right? Well, that doesn't help me, right? So then what do I need to do? Well, then we need to go find the larger bitmap image for ABC and hope that we have something that will fit in a larger scale type of image. That's the same one, and if I don't, then I need to make one that's a larger image. The other part about this is that you need to remember what the sizing is. So if I look at something like this, which is the same button, as you can see, and hover over it, you see it says 72 by, it's a 72 by 72 image, 144 by 104, right? So that's the sizing on it. Well, that's all well and good, but now I need to remember that that's the size, because if I wanted something different, or even these ABC ones as an example, like family, 132 by 92, 132 by 92, oh, that's HD, I'm sorry, or 144 and 104, obviously they're going to make a difference. But, if I need to change something out, no problem. We can still drag and drop them on there and change it out as long as it's the same size. But the beauty of Integration Designer 11 is that it utilizes the 9-patch graphics. So if I go to my tuner page here, real quick, and we'll select that menu on here, you'll notice that, all these buttons are in here. Well, one of the things that you notice is that it's a singular page. If I wanted to manipulate how this page looks, or I'm sorry, let me back up. I'm speeding ahead. I get so excited about this stuff. We're talking about button graphics and resizing and imagery, right? Well, something along the lines like this ABC logo, if I wanted to have something like that, I'll talk about viewports in a second here. And I go to drag an icon here. That's the beauty of Integration Designer 11. I can go to my bitmaps, type in a search for ABC, and see that there's that ABC logo. Now you look at that and you go, well, hold on, that's a white logo. Okay, that's okay. That works just fine because it's on a white background, right? Now, here's the really cool thing about it. What did you just notice that happened? Let's do that again. I'm going to drag it. You notice how large. That. Notice how large that image is compared to the button. But when I drag it onto that button, it's resizing itself. These are called 9-patch graphics. And the beauty of these 9-patch graphics is that it enables us to make those buttons larger or smaller, dependent on the actual size of the image. So if that image was created in this size, I could make it smaller. I can make it thinner if I need to. But the beauty is that it crops itself right to that button. And in fact, you can look at that button and go, oh, well, that's kind of cool. But what if I wanted a different type of bitmap image here? How do I know that it will do that crop each and every time? Well, what if I look at something along the lines of, let's see here, where is it? There. Oh, that's not it. Oh, black background, and now I can't seem to find it. Where did it go? We'll use another example. Whereas I've got bitmap images here. Let's go right back to the top. You'll notice that it's first wave as an example. If I drag it over, it's a white button, but you notice where that list button is, it has just that check mark with the word list. But if I place it on here, check out what happens. It will essentially blend that image to the background and invert it. Get rid of that text real quick, just so you can see that a little more clear. And in fact, we can make that bigger and smaller too, if we need to, based on the size of the graphic. So it will invert that image, right? And make it flow with what's needed by you as you develop these. So really, with the 9-patch graphics and the blending and cropping, you have some very unique features in here. In fact, there's even a further one that we can get into here. Grab 90s on 9. 90s on 9. Grab this on, put this on. 90s on 9. And it looks great. But I think to myself, it's big, but I want it just a little bigger. Right? Well, what I can actually do is I can right click on it, go into the properties of it, and under the image tab, you can see that there's padding available for it. And I can adjust that padding to being larger or smaller. So if this is the size that I want it at, but when it's active, I want it to be, when it's active, what I want it to be is a little smaller. I could adjust that padding, and as you can see, that's not very good. You do something extreme, 30, 30, 30, 30. You'll notice that it adjusted the padding around it and made that image smaller. So now that when it's selected, it'll look like that image is shrinking down and then coming back. Now, if you didn't want it to crop to the content of that button, you could uncheck it here. In fact, you could even say, I don't want it to blend, and have that white background on there if you want. Or there's that crop to the content. So you have the options and the capability to customize these very, very easily. Let's take it even a step further here. Let's go in and say, okay, I look at these and I go, well, these are all nice and they seem to work pretty well, but my client really wants to have, say, the play button not be white, or they want the stop button to be red. Well, in Integration Designer 9, if I wanted this stop button to be red, what do I need to do? Well, I can't go into the properties and adjust anything here, right? In fact, I would have to find probably a red version of this button and make that red square and do the custom button editor. But in Integration Designer 11, you can actually select that and then be able to choose change the template color of it. I'm going to have to make this a little bigger here just so that we can see. Second here. So at the bottom of Integration Designer 11, you'll notice next to the word normal is the text color, which you're used to, the fill color, and then icon overlay. Icon overlay will give us the ability to change the color of, say, that white image to red. And now it's red. It's a very simple process to do so. So if we were to add in, and this is always a fun example to use, say a Roku page. And I use this just as a base example to show you how this works. But if I go to the Roku page and I want that Netflix to be Netflix red, I don't want to have to go and find that red Netflix icon. I could just change that icon overlay. Oh, sorry, I changed the active one. Change the normal one to red, and now it's red. Or I want Prime Video to be blue. I don't have to go and create those graphics each and every time. I want Hulu to be green, right? Isn't that their color? Or Disney Plus to be that, what is it, light blue that they use? And you can easily add that color scheme in without having to recreate the wheel and reinvent and recreate the graphics or go and find them each and every time. So keep that in mind as you start to as you're developing these different graphics, is that icon overlay really makes it very easy for you. All right, so what about other things like gauges and sliders? How do we put those on? Well, same basic thing. In ID9, you find what you need, right? Slider. There's my slider that I can use on the T4X as an example from here, but I'm locked into that size again because again, it's not an iPad. I don't have the ability to make that bigger or smaller. Or on the iPad itself, right? I can make this, because it's a drawn button, I can make it bigger and smaller, which is great. But if I need to specifically select how it's going to look and feel, or I'm locked into how it's going to look and feel on this side of things. Well, in Integration Designer 11, what we can do is we can actually find those bitmap images. Let me find a slider, and I'm going to find this slider. And what you'll notice on the right-hand side, and hopefully you can see this, is this little image above the slider icon. That indicates that that's a 9-patch based graphic. So I could take this, place it on here, and check it out. Make it bigger, but I can also adjust it and make it taller and shorter just from one graphic. So it's really easy to do with the sliders and the gauges to be able to make those and reposition them on the fly based on what the need is. All right. Well, that's all well and good, and we're kind of cooking right along here. But what about other type of graphics that we use each and every day? We've got a client that says, yeah, this is great and everything looks fantastic, and I love the way that this homepage looks, but I'd like it to have a little different. You want to add a little flair to it, or you want it to look a little bit different. Well, can you, in ID9, if we wanted to create that homepage and change the background on it, well, we can still do that, right? We can clear out our search. We can, of course, can determine what we want here, but I'll select Oasis and select maybe some different backgrounds, or type in my search under all libraries and choose backgrounds. And I will get all the backgrounds available. So I could drag and drop that one, but that doesn't fit. Right. So then I got to remember, okay, what's the size of this, right? This is a 800 by 480 type of screen. So maybe I do 800 or 480. I try to find something that'll fit well enough in here, right? And if it doesn't fit, that's fine, but we need to figure out which one will and which one won't based on numbers or stretching it out and making it so. That's a lot of extra work. In ID11, if we go to the bitmaps tab and I clear this out, and I want to select a certain background, it's divided up for us like coral backgrounds. And I can get all the backgrounds for it. Whereas in here, right, it was just all listed out based on all the different templates available. So not only that, but you'll also notice that these are all ones that will fit in on this T4X, the 480 by 800. How come? Because we have this filter icon in the bitmaps that allows us to make this a lot easier to know that it will fit each and every time. And not only that, if I were to change the background on this guy, here, I'm going to the page properties just so you can see what I'm talking about. Stretch it out. Won't look very good, but there we go. All right, so I've got this on here, right? And I go to page 2. Well, now I need to change that over. So now I need to do the same process, right? And pull it over, which again, not a lot of work. But what you'll notice in ID 11 is that it's done for us for all the pages. And you might say, hold on. I don't want it on all pages. What if I only want it on that one page? That's so nice in ID 9 that I can just do it on one page and not have it affect. That's okay. You can certainly do that. You can go into the page properties and say, instead of using it as a default background, I want this page to use a custom background. So I select custom background, press OK, go back to my bitmaps, find whichever one I want, throw it on there, and now you'll see that the other ones have maintained that default, whereas this guy is just its standard, is its custom background. So it's a very easy process to be able to just change them all, change one, undo, change one of them on the fly, whatever you need to do. But it allows you to do that each and every time. And in fact, if we go back into the custom or the page properties, you can see that if I did use a custom background or even the default background, I can set that to all pages. So I could actually take off whatever image is the background, put a picture on here. If I had a picture, I think I have the good ones here. Let's see. Here, we'll use that.
I can't believe you don't have any Vikings pictures.
You got to remember, my computer decided to go to heaven. So I'm kind of getting everything set up here, right? But I could use this as my default, right? And it's fine. But then I could also set it to as the default for all pages. And now I've got it as all my pages. So you can make that customization change very quickly. Get back to a better quality one. There we are. So really, when it comes to the flexibility and capabilities in ID 9 versus 11, you still have a lot of the customization you still have all the customization that you want in ID 9, but it's just even more so in ID 11 in terms of the design of that page and how it looks. Now, let's take it even a step further, right? When we're talking about the design differences and creating, doing pages is one thing and rearranging buttons and, okay, I'm going to, I want to shift this over or I want to align. All those tools still live in ID 11. No issues there whatsoever. But what you do need to remember is that within ID 11, you have some very cool new features. So not new, but some very cool features, one of which is layers. Layers allows us to have overlaid buttons, just like a Photoshop would. So I don't need to create more and more pages. We talked about utilizing, say, and actually, I'm going to switch to the iPad. It's much easier to see on the iPad here. So if I look at the iPad, I've got a bunch of layers. Well, if I wanted to have the room menu and then the source menu and then the list or a power menu and the left menu and all these things on here and hope they don't interfere with each other, I would need to make individual pages like we do on this guy. So you flip it here. Let's find our home page. So there's our home page, which is fine. It works great. Favorite activities. And then we've got our games pages and movie pages, but then I need to create each one of those pages each and every time. Well, with utilizing layers, this gives us the ability to create this and put them on top of each other and not have them interfere, because I can not only put the layers on that show the menu, but I can also go into the properties and determine when the visibility of said layer will come up. And this can be anything from a volume level, mute, hey, the system is muted button that you create a layer on, to doing something along the lines of like a room list that's going to be on all the pages that you work with. And you can share these layers and utilize them over and over and over again without having to do copy paste or constant positioning. It will share those layers over if you so desire, or you could take them off one page if you wanted. For example, if I didn't want, for whatever reason, the power menu on here, I could go into I could delete this one layer from it, and now it's not going to be in there. But it's not going to affect the rest of them, as you can see. So I can create these layers to not only be visible, but I can have them be shared, and I can have them pull information. So on this home page, we have this layer of menu. And because we use that tagging feature with the auto programming, within here, we can go in and say, you know what, this now playing, I want these because they're already tagged, each one of them. Right? This is tagged with the word play, or this is going to be it has been tagged with the dynamic image, now playing cover. What I can actually do is I could go in and say, for now playing, I want you to pull your data. The source of your data that I want to auto program is going to come from player one. I press OK, and now it programs for me. So this creates a very easy way for us to not only create those repetitive imagery, but also have it populate and pull without having to create multiple pages on each and every time. Okay, and this is very powerful because when you think about doing something like a lighting control solution, where you need to have, you want to have the ability to control those lights in a certain room from a global device like an iPad, and I want to have each one of those sections of lights populate the data, I could easily create layers for each room, for each set of banks of lights, and have it pull that information from there and share that to wherever I need to go or whatever I need to use it for each and every time. Vincent, is there anything else that you want to talk about with layers on this?
What I love about layers and that I had a lot of trouble with in ID9 is when you change the toolbars. So, for example, I don't know if we could see the toolbar. I don't think it's exposed on that template. If you go further down, you could see a toolbar. If you make a change on that, you have to do it in multiple places with copy and paste. Now, if that was a shared layer in ID11, it'd be a lot different. If you made a change in one place, it would fix it everywhere else. In other words, like a volume level there. The volume level is a layer that's shared throughout the project file. There's only a few pages, but there could be many. Now, if you wanted to make a change to that layer, maybe color the icons. Let's do that as an example. Maybe you want to color the mute button or something.
Yeah, so you would color bigger so they can see it here.
Yeah. So you would color the mute button. Let's just use that as a stupid example. And now if you look at the rest of the pages on the interface, you'll see that that change has been reflected for you. And that's one of the great benefits of layers. Not so much that you could manage all your pop-ups 10 times easier, which you can, but really it's for the ability to provide maintenance to your project in a matter of seconds. Whereas with ID9, it does require a lot of copy and pasting or, avoiding changes. So just wanted to throw that in.
No, absolutely. That's a great point. And in terms of design, we talked about, being able to do pages within ID9 and having everything on one specific page. And let's see, I'll pull this over. Whereas I have satellite cable DVR here, and that's a lot of information on a singular page. If I were to go here, you'll notice that there is what's called a viewport. Well, a viewport is really nice because on a viewport, I can actually create a swipeable section on this device where my client swipes from right to left, and the initial viewport they see is this right here. If they swipe from right to left, it then has the command or this section of banks of buttons or all of their channels. So essentially, without having to create multiple buttons, utilizing flags and then visibility or even possibly running into the issue of, having two active buttons in a single area. We can utilize a viewport on devices like this, or the KA units, as another example, to be able to create those additional areas, swipeable based areas, for your client to be able to access additional functionality. Whereas in ID9, we don't have that capability into a single page or create a secondary page. Now, you still can do on, say, or on a T4X, as another example, you still can create those pages, which is fine, and utilize the frame feature to be able to have that. But again, that's not swipeable on here. That's a button push to get to that next frame. Whereas, excuse me, using viewports, you have that capability on here. I guess those are two different things. Let me clarify. Frame is like an extension of a page. It's like looking at multiple monitors from left to right. And as you add those frames in, you're adding in those pages. So it is very, very useful to have that capability and to go to this different frames if you don't have viewport capabilities. Whereas on an iOS-based device or RTI panel-based device, we have that capability to create viewports on certain sections and have that swipeable area. So you do have frames on ID9 and ID11, but viewports are available on ID11 and not ID9. Again, I don't want to belabor the point, but when you're creating these user interfaces, keep in mind that you want to make sure that you have capability to adapt them to what the client needs quickly and easily without having to create so many pages that it takes up so much memory space. It would weigh the system down. You don't want to have that at all. I've seen so many projects over my say, well, the processor's so slow, I can't, it doesn't seem like it's reacting fast enough. And you open up the file and there are an iPad, and there's 3 iPads, and they each have about 50 pages on them. And it's pointless type of pages, really, where they're not necessarily pointless, but there's so much information that doesn't necessarily need to be there, but they put it on anyway. They try to cram it all in. The nice part about utilizing layers and viewports and that capability is that it's going to reduce that amount of data that's needed by the processor to run. Okay. So really keep that in mind as you start to develop, and then you can make those quick adjustments as you go along. Now, the question that we get, and Vincent, I want you to help me out with this one, and just because I haven't done it very much, but the question is a lot of the times is, okay, well, but I've been doing ID9 for so long, created some really cool custom templates. How can I use those in ID11? Right? How can I reuse my work? Because I really don't want to have to redo this each and every time. And go ahead.
No. Go ahead, finish. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say there are ways to go about doing it, but there are certain things that there are certain obstacles you'll run into, and we want to make sure that you're aware of that. So what were you going to say, Vincent?
No, I was going to say, so think about whether you really want to do that first, because any interface could be created really quick within ID11 because of the scalable graphics, because you could use your own icons. So in other words, you saw the way Tyler was able to embed those graphics within the icon, like on a button menu. If Tyler wanted to go and grab an icon, even one that he downloaded from the internet, onto one of those buttons, he'd be able to do it easily. So first, think about whether you really want to harvest those old templates or whether you would like a fresh start. Because remember, once you have a fresh start, now you can scale them, resize anything you want in the future, and make changes pretty easily without having to use the old methodology, which is go to Photoshop, pull it out of the software, go into Photoshop, resize it, embed a graphic, or maybe both, and then put it back in. So first decide that. Now, if you're still hell-bent on using the template from ID9, what you're going to do is you're going to open your ID9 file within ID11. You're not going to use it. You're just going to save it real quick as an ID11 file. So give it a different name too. So don't call it the same name as the .rti file. Give it a different name. So select all files, navigate to your ID9 file. So let's just say it's, you want to call it Alira, this file that you're in? I would
I
just
do.
call it, I would just call it,
UI 9 to 11.
yes. So just, okay, and then do that.
Oh.
Well, I thought you were going to say, open it. You're going to open it, or first you have to, first you have
Let's try
to,
that again.
you have to get out of this Apex file or ID11 file and open it first. And yeah, so now you want to open the ID9 file. Right now, save this as a different name. Save it as a different name than dot. Yeah, so just call this the UI thing. There you go. Okay, so now when you go back to your ID11 project, sorry to make you jump out of that.
So we exit out of there, and now we're going to
Yeah,
hit
you
up.
open up your ID11 project that you were in. Okay, and now you can merge pages into whatever controller you like. So you would, you have to click a source first.
Oh, that's sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, there you go. So
all this jumping around, right?
yeah, of course, because it's a crazy process. Then you just merge, pick the controller. No, I mean in the source, pick the hit merge pages.
Sorry. There we go.
Yeah, hit merge pages. Select the controller you want to merge pages into. Is that the one you're on? Yeah, another system file. Navigate to your ID9 file and open it.
The ID9 one?
No, your Apex, I'm sorry. The one, I'm sorry, the ID11, the one you created. Sorry about that. And then click open. So now you'll be able to merge in whatever controller has the pages. Just merge them all in. Just select all and merge them in. There you go. So it takes a couple of seconds because the graphics are a little heavier. So they'll merge in eventually in a few seconds. And now you'll be able to distribute them around the file as needed. Those were landscapes, so you'll have to rotate your. There you go.
Right.
So now you can distribute these to whatever sources they need to be on. So it's not a great idea. As you saw, it's cumbersome, confusing. But if you have to preserve your graphics because you just want to preserve them for this time until you have the chance to convert them the real way, this is the way to do it. So
now, will the commands come over with it or any macros?
No, the macros will all be gone. Let me explain why. In ID11, the software has a real structure, not just the rooms and the sources and things like that, but the tags and macro and variable levels. So because ID11 doesn't have any of that, the software doesn't know how to define all that information when it brings it in. So the only honest choice to make is to lose it all, which is probably the right way to do it because it's not going to do the right way anyway, even if it makes a broad assumption. So you'll still have to program it with the right, you'll notice some things will preserve, like system variables that you insert rather than use tags for. Like, so in other words, if you inserted a control variable, you might see it preserve as long as the driver is present in your new project. But other things, I'm afraid they're going to be gone. So if the project, for what it's worth, doing this is really, I would say 80% good for nothing. but you will get your graphics, which is the only real, time saver here. But again, then try to resize something there. Not going to happen.
Right. Oh, right. Trying to make it bigger or
Yeah.
smaller.
So again, let me recap that process because it was confusing. First, open up the ID9 file in Integration Designer 11. Okay, so now you opened it, save it as a different file name. So if you opened up a file called abc.rti, save it as xyz.apex, because that's the extension for ID11 files. Okay. Then once you have that file, save it, and then you can merge pages into it from any ID11 project. So remember to select all files when you open it, because remember, by default, it's looking for that .apex extension, which is really for Apex and ID11. So a little confusing, sorry about that, but still nonetheless shouldn't be a common process. You're going to be amazed at how quick you'll build templates in ID11.
Yep. Yeah, as we can see, there are still checks on this one as an example.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you could get away with that in ID11. There's no need to resize it. You have to program that now. You have to tag it, which is one of the best features in ID11, because now if you're programming a source device, you only have to do it once. If you make a change on a source device, you only have to do it once. Even if the client has 5 iPads, 10 kids with their own iPhones, 3 in-wall keypads controlling the same device.
Exactly.
Now, the only other thing I wanted to mention, if you don't mind,
No, please.
is that one thing I really love about ID11 in terms of graphics is that we have and continue to add personalized templates. So if you add Apple TV or Roku or RTI Music or Sonos, now you don't just have a generic template created. You have an actual template that's been built for that device only. You'll see Roku, and you'll see an intercom and keyboards and all sorts of things. So pretty cool. I mean, I don't think we have enough yet, but we do have a few common ones, and we continue to add them going forward. So just something to kind of save time about, because this is what it's all about. It's all about saving time.
Absolutely. Very good. Very good. So I without belaboring the point, I think you can see there are some immensely powerful things within Integration Designer 11 in terms of the design aspect of it. And as we continue on with our training initiatives here, you're going to see more and more of that information. But for the time being, I wanted to share with you some additional resources that you can utilize to make sure that you have everything that you need. So let me get into that real quick. So first and foremost, in terms of, I jumped, apologize. System design, any pre-installation questions, just send them to Dealer Experience, or you can call Vincent or Luke or Clyde. Let us know how we can help. And this is for maybe some of our newer dealers who don't know, we have a team that's dedicated to making sure that you're designing the right systems and how you can do it, but we want to help you. We want it to be successful. So keep that in mind. Any training and knowledge, send them to me at training@RTI Control. And then any post-installation questions, obviously you can send to tech support. Actually, it should be just support@RTI Control. I apologize, it's a typo. For any post-installation. So in terms of getting some technical documents on things, bulletins, we try to post as much as we can about whether it's the user interface design or what have you. On the dealer site, if you go under the support and then technical support docs and technical bulletins, you can find all sorts of things, whether it's the graphics to specifics about product, whatever you need. Just take a look at the technical bulletins. And these are all things that you can use. That's actually a great resource for you to do before you call tech support if you are having an issue. Say you're having trouble getting an RTSP feed from a camera going. Check that out. Check out the technical bulletins, because any of these calls we come in, we document, and if we get more than one, we try to write them up. So There is also a two-way graphics guide. If you want to create your own graphics guide, as an example, you certainly can. On the forums, under the integration zone and then custom graphics, there is a two-way graphics guide that we have provided that will give you all the information you need about how to create the 9-patch, the sliders, the image lists, all that kind of fun stuff. But if you are not into that stuff and you want to have somebody do it for you, there's a ton of third-party custom design people out there. Like my custom design was the one that we used the example for, the Alira 1.4 as just an example. But they do everybody on there does a great job of manipulating. If you need just a channel icon, just one off, you can't find it anywhere, you don't know how to do it, shoot somebody a note on there and they're happy to help. And they might not charge you for it. They might. Depends on who they are. But check on the RTI forums for more and make sure that you have all that information. So, and just to kind of reiterate what we said, there's a ton of opportunity for you in terms of the process of developing user interface. The key points I have for you is, one, keep it simple. Make sure that you're not trying to cram too much onto a single page. A lot of times you don't need the weather data when you just want to control the volume. Okay. Make sure your system is prepped. Make sure you have a Windows 10 or higher machine with 64-bit. Be aware of the layers and the viewports. We have a ton of information on how to use those and how to program those on the RTI Excel, as well as the technical bulletin. So take a look at that. And then make sure to use us as resources as well. And let us know how we can help. So with that, did we get any additional questions in, Vincent, that we should show or need to address on utilizing the programming?
One question, which I'd like to do. Somebody asked about creating your own templates. Now, you don't have to be a Photoshop expert to be an RTI dealer, right? We have templates. There's some great third-party templates. But if you really want to create your own templates, you can do that. And the great part about it is that if you tag them with a standard tag name. Now, for those of you who don't know what tags are our way of labeling buttons and feedback so that macros and variables can be auto-programmed by the software. That's one use for them. There's plenty of more. But for this purpose, just think of them as little identifiers that allow us to program things in advance. So when we add a template for a Blu-ray player and you add a Sony Blu-ray, it knows how to code up all those buttons. So if you pre-tag your templates in advance, not only when you import them, will it import the template and now you can use them, but it will auto-program them as well. So eventually we'll have a class on creating a template. It might be a little on the crude side, but I think we could create something pretty cool, especially for the commercial world where you don't need to be as flashy. But definitely you can draw buttons. You can use some of the assets we have. Since the buttons are resizable, you have such a high range of capability that you can really make it your own anyway, even using the assets we give you. You change your background, you change button sizes, you bring in some icons from some websites, all of a sudden you have a template, so, we'll have a training on that soon, but it's surprisingly easy and really self-gratifying if I'm being honest, but not everybody needs to do that or is interested in doing that.
Yeah, I think, you hit the nail on the head. When in terms of creating your own template, you're essentially going to create a file in Integration Designer, but each one of these buttons that you create or each one of these layers that you do create, whether it's volume up or volume down, or even this blank one that I threw on here, each one is going to have a tag name. That's namely why a lot of the commands that didn't come over from, say, this one that we imported, trying to find that page.
That's weird.
But anyway, you could create something like that, you throw a tag on, because it came over, this might be a tag button that you touch it and it gets going, right? It might just be a simple page link or whatever, but you can tag that with title page and then assign a command to or a page link to it and then utilize that same tag.
Yeah. Oh, I know why it's not shown, because there is no visible state because all the programming got removed.
Yeah.
So you just have to delete them, delete the the buttons that are over on top because they don't have any layer programming or visible state programming, I should say. Somebody's asking if we could show them how to use the multiple location feature. I think we have a tech note on that, and we're going to show that in a future training. It's a little off topic for what we're doing here today, but if you could send me an email after this, I'm happy to send you a tech note on how to use the feature. And we're going to have a training coming up on the ID 11.3, which should explain how to use those features.
All right. Any other questions out there? The advanced training webinars come soon. Yeah, one of the things that we're working on right now is that's a great question. We're doing a few different things with ID 11 and all the features that it was brought to the table. Obviously it takes a bit to make sure that we are looking at each one of the trainings that we already have and assessing whether or not we need to convert them to the ID 11.3 or they can remain, in the templates they are. So we're kind of analyzing those. We're also building out our headquarter training facility right now, and planning on doing a 3-day full-on class here this year, starting this year, and where you'll have hands-on experience about all aspects of doing a full-on system with RTI. And we'll continue to add items into RTI Excel as well. There's a number of things that are on the plate, multi-location being one of them as well in there. Some new features that were pertaining to specifics in with 11.3. But yeah, we'll continue to do those and add additional ones down the road.
Yeah, I was telling Jeff that I have I made a little tech note for myself, of my favorite free programs that I use, just little things to blur backgrounds or, manipulate graphics or whatever. So if anyone's interested.
Yeah, if you go to the RTI, like I said, the technical bulletins is another, as I mentioned, does have things about that. Like if you wanted to create your own background, there is a technical bulletin on here that does tell you. Now it was built in ID 9 and walks you through it, but the ability for you to create, say, a background. There it is. Color graphic, creating your own. This one is an example. And again, this is old. It was written during ID 9, but the premise of creating a background is the same right here. Utilizing the caret hashtag BG center as the naming nomenclature within the graphic itself will allow it to have that little state of Indiana looking image that you've seen on right here.
Right.
And designate it as a background.
This would be more like graphic programs and stuff to make things in. So if you wanted to create maybe resize graphics quickly or just things like that. I don't know, just like utilities and stuff, as opposed to using, something more advanced. So someone's asking if any graphic can be made into a 9-slice or 9-patch, as they call it. 9-patch has been around for a while. It's what the Android system uses. If you're an Android app editor, learning how to create 9-patch graphics is probably second nature. There are tutorials how to create them all over the place online outside of RTI. So it's not something we necessarily support in terms of, we didn't create 9-patch graphics. We're just using them. So just do a Google search on how to create 9-slice or 9 patches. And just for your reference, you create 9 different slices on the graphic, kind of separating the middle part so that if you drag an image by its frame angles to be bigger or smaller, you don't distort the image in the middle. So there's a tutorial on how to do it online if you're interested. But any graphic can be made into a 9-patch. Absolutely. As long as it's a reasonable graphic.
Right.
The rounder the graphic, the more expertise you need to have, I should say. But still possible.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, no doubt. You can get crazy with pages. No need to do that. Keep it simple. All right. Well, thank you all so much for your time and attention. Thank you for your dedication to the brand and share your knowledge. Get on the forum of the custom areas. If you've done some really cool things, share the knowledge. People want to know some different some really cool ways that you can incorporate different graphics into it, and what you can do different, or what you have done different. And and the one thing that I will say, and I've done this before, is that if you can keep it simple and easy to see, your clients will be happy. You don't want to put on, say, light text on a light background. It'll make it hard. It'll make it difficult. You want them to have a fluid interaction with it, simple. They don't want to have to search for something. Make sure that it's simple and easy to use. And with that, last question that came in. Vincent answered it already.
Okay.
Perfect. So thanks again, everybody. We appreciate your time, and let us know how we can help. Have a great one, everybody. Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for coming.